Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Needens. I'm one of the social workers at the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center in the Cognitive Care Network program. And we're going to talk today about something that perhaps one of the most, I was going to say one of the most difficult areas, I think, to really discuss or think through, because it goes to kind of the core of our relationship with the person that we're supporting. But we want to think through these. There are places in the disease that add, especially, a certain amount of burden or challenge, and these promises certainly can be one. I'm not going to read this Mark Twain poem, but I want you to look at least the first three words, and that is, I cannot promise. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this life we cannot promise. It does not matter if it's you or me or someone diagnosed with a cognitive impairment or not. We cannot promise each other that life will be easy. We cannot promise each other that we will not be a burden to one another. We cannot promise one another that there will not be tough spots. We cannot promise that there are times we may do something wrong, and we cannot promise that decisions that we are forced to make may have impact on others. No matter who we are, fundamentally, we cannot promise those things. There are too many things in this world that are beyond our control. And don't think for a minute that we are not a shared species in which we add burden to each other at times, and we're going to talk about that. So in my decades now of talking with care partners and people diagnosed with cognitive impairment, I hear these promises, and I always hear them in the context of grief, in the context of burden, in the context of pain. And here's some of the most common. These are promises I often hear care partners make to themselves. I won't ask for any help. I'm going to do this myself as long as I can. And long as you can may be beyond the time that your health or your mental health is compromised. It may be beyond the time when it is best for the person you're caring for. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily means geography. I've seen many of you struggle with even accepting help coming into the home. So often this promise is, they would do it for me, so I do it for them. They would be, committed to me. They would take care of me, or they did take care of me, so I've got to do it. As if the variables are always equal, and as if that person never would have ever included someone else. I will always tell the truth. That's another promise that I hear care partners make. So even at a point when a person is impaired and struggling with assimilating that information, that it's difficult not to be completely transparent and truthful. We're going to talk about that. I won't share information that will add burden to my family. So there's some of you, and often it's spouses or partners who will say, I'm not going to tell the kids, I'm not going to let them know, or maybe it's an adult child who has siblings out of town who may be going through their own challenges. And so you just decide, you make this promise to yourself that you're not going to share any of the difficult stuff with your family. So when something is needed, when you have to include family, when something happens to you, then those family members are shocked and their difficulty is exponentially added. Some of you will promise yourself, I will oblige all the promises that are asked of me. Maybe it's not promises you made to yourself, but it's promises that the person you're caring for asks you to make to them. Maybe that's never putting them in a nursing home. I've so frequently heard that. You know, he asked or she told me never put her in a nursing home. And making that at a time when the variables were not completely understood, that the consequences for you was not completely understood, the consequences for them not completely understood. Sometimes they will have you make promises, never have someone else take care of me. Has to be you. Now let's fundamentally think about that, what they are really saying to you, and you know good and well they didn't mean it. But what the underlying premise of that kind of promise is that they are more important than you are. And that it doesn't matter the consequence on your health or mental health, that they're more important and they want you to sacrifice it all for them. And rarely, I mean, rarely, 0.0001% of people would really mean that. The vast majority, almost everyone, would never make such a statement that they're more important than their family. And if they understood the consequences, if they understood the benefit of what could transpire if other help was included, they would change their mind. And then I've heard some people say the opposite. They'll tell their family members, give up on me, just put me somewhere. And, including help does not mean giving up on people. There's lots of good life to be lived after the diagnosis of a cognitive impairment, whatever type. There are lots of good moments. There are moments where you just have this beautiful shared feeling. There's moments where, you see the old them. There's new moments where you hear something that you never heard before, where you understood something you never understood before. There's lots of beautiful moments. There's new lessons to be learned. So we don't make promises to give up on someone. We never give up on someone. Why do they have us make these promises? Let's think about that. Is it really about what they're making us promise? And I would assert the answer is no. I would assert that the reason people require us to make promises or want us to make promises are for these reasons. They are afraid. They're afraid of what's going to happen. They don't know what's around the corner. They don't know what living in a long-term care facility would look like. They don't know if they could adjust to someone else coming in and helping. They don't know what role you would have in that. Would they be abandoned? Part of that is about grief. I don't want changes to be. I like my life, or I like my independence, or whatever it is. And part of the reason people have you make promises is simply they're working through grief. Those kind of promises are often requested after they've had some experience with someone else. And so they're having you make those promises in the context of sorting through whatever happened to this other person. Sometimes it's about misperceptions. If they say, always tell me the truth, that may be because they don't have the full context. They don't perhaps fully understand that there may be a time logic and reasoning is destructed in their brain. That telling them the truth does not mean a joint process, and that's what's really expected. So really thinking about disease information and education, and when is it biologically appropriate to maintain the truth telling, and when is it biologically inappropriate to tell people the truth at all costs, even when it's painful. So understanding those things, but because of the misperceptions, taking information out of context, the grief associated, the fear associated, that's why these promises come up. And the wonderful thing about understanding that is because there can be new promises that really address those underlying things. And here's the new promises that we're going to make each other, that you're going to make the person that you're supporting, and they can make with you. The new promises are, let's make sure love is always in the room. There's a lot of things that aren't so important. Someone come in and help clean the house? Does someone come in and help bathe the person you're taking care of? Not near as important as, can you feel the love in the room? Are you at a place emotionally, mentally, that you can feel love in the room? Let's make a promise to each other, to you, to the person you're supporting. Approach from a family perspective. Guess what? Nobody gets left behind. You are as important as they are. Your children are as important as you are. These diseases, like every disease really, should be approached from a family perspective. How do we support everyone doing as well as they can? How do we support everyone with supporting good mental health, good physical health, moments of peace, moments of joy? The best you can do is good enough. Make a promise to yourself about that. Make a promise to them about that. The best they can, the best you can, is good enough. Promise each other that you're going to look for strengths. That yes, there's pain. Yes, there's grief. Yes, there's loss. Yes, there's decline. But guess what? There's also strengths that remain. Don't forget to see them. Let's promise each other that. Let's look for the good. Let's look for what works. Let's look for what's possible in managing this. Promise one another that feelings are more than facts. That when someone is middle stage and beyond and cannot engage in a logical discussion, who cannot manage a risk-benefit profile, who cannot come to decisions, that we do not engage in a process that requires them to attempt and to suffer as a result. Therapeutic fibbing is ethical. Let's all understand together that feelings, when we're talking about middle stage on, are more important than the facts. Yes, ethically, in mild cognitive impairment, early dementia, people are completely capable of processing and being part of discussion, and they should be included. Middle stage on, that's a different story. And let's promise this, that we're not going to see giving up as including help. We're not going to define giving up as a transition to long-term care. We're not going to define giving up as attending a support group. We're not going to define giving up as sharing what's going on with other family and friends. What we are going to do is do our best. What we are going to do is integrate a team that allows us to navigate in a way that preserves quality of life. And in that way, we are promising each other we're never going to give up.